Okay, so since you guys are first timers, that's really good. Has anybody been looking at houses? Yes, where?
I mean, just online, like.
Just online, okay.
Yeah, same in HGTV.
Okay. All right, very good. And have you been looking in Denton or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Denver right now.
Okay, and how about you?
Dallas.
Dallas?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So for those who have been looking or haven't been looking, really quickly, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about what you're looking for. So what are some ideas you have when you're looking for a house? Location. And so what do you mean by location?
Safe.
Okay, what else?
Close to your job.
Okay, so I'm gonna say small commute. Is that okay? Because that's what I think about. What else? Number of bedrooms, backyard, no backyard. What are you thinking?
Definitely the number of bedrooms and bathrooms.
Okay, so. What else? Space.
As far as I would backyard or the inside as well.
Okay. Backyard. And so do you want to do yard work or you don't want to do yard work? Or you don't care?
It
Doesn't
doesn't matter.
matter? All right, you can come to my house anytime you want to mow. I will allow you to do that. What else? Anything else in particular that you're looking for?
Garage.
A garage. All right.
The year it was made.
The year it was made, so what, you want something older, you want something newer?
Something newer.
Something newer. And so, anybody want something older? Okay, when you're looking at Denton, you know, we kind of got a good mix of both of those things. Some of the little suburbs like Carrollton and Farmers Branch, it's all new, right? It's all pretty new, I'd say 1980s. So, what else? Anything else we didn't cover that you're thinking about considering? Or have said, no, I definitely don't want that.
I like to be around by stores. I mean like things that I can easily get to, not like going to a Walmart that's like 20 minutes away or 30.
Okay, so I'm gonna say close to amenities. Right. So, and depending on if you're looking in the DFW area, that can be kind of hard to find for some suburbs. It's like really clustered housing, and then it's like a shopping center, you know,
Yeah.
way down there, which is really odd to me. But I don't know why we've planned it that way, but we have. So it's very strange, but. Yeah, it depends on where you're looking, I think, for that. That's a big deal to me too. I know some people don't care, but I'm kind of from a smaller town, so I'm not used to driving really long distances or anything. So it's important to me. Well, thank you guys for giving me some ideas. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Rachel Grimes. I work at the Student Money Management Center, and today we're going to talk all about starting to purchase your first home, which can be really exciting. Can also be very stressful as well. So hopefully some of the things that we walk through today will help you get prepared, make the process as stress-free as possible. If after today's workshop you have more questions, I won't dive into depth into a few things you might need to know because some things are a little bit situational for different people. But if you have more questions, you can always come into our office in Chestnut Hall. We'll sit down, we'll work with you one-on-one to help you develop a budget, to help you look at different types of mortgages, to help you look at different types of first-time homeowner plans if you're interested in those. So definitely come see us. And we also have in our office, apart from coaching and workshops, a small loans program. If you get into financial bind, we'll be able to help you guys out with a little bit of money. Since we're a small group, usually there's a lot more people in this workshop, but today, since we're a small group, if you have any questions, you have some experiences, throw your hands up, let me know, stop me, and we can kind of talk about those things. So there's a few things that I want you to start working on before you start getting really starry-eyed about all of the possibilities about all of these houses that are out there. Because you can go to Zillow and Trulia and HGTV and all of these realtor websites, and you can find all of these houses and you're like, yeah, that house is so cool. And sometimes those websites will give you an estimate of the monthly mortgage payment that's out there for that particular home. And you might think, yeah, that really fits into my budget. But you might find that once you start doing some of the numbers, it really doesn't fit for you. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
We just started. So the first thing I want you to do is start saving some money. And why do you think you need some money?
Down payment.
A down payment? What else besides a down payment? Anybody know? There's a few other things you're going to have to pay for in the buying process, not only the down payment, but also some closing costs. You might have to pay for an inspection fee. If you do some pre-approval for mortgages, they might sometimes charge you a fee for that. So you want to have a little bit of cash in hand to help you get started, not just for the down payment, but for some of those other costs that come down the road, and we'll really get into that in a little bit. The next thing that you need to start thinking about is creating a budget, or not even creating a budget, but really identifying what your monthly expenses are. So right now, without a mortgage payment, if you pay for your cell phone, how much is that? If you have a car payment, if you have insurance, how much do you spend on average on gas, on groceries? Think about everything that you spend money on, and that's going to help you identify, even if a realtor or the bank tells you, hey, you can spend $1,200 a month on a mortgage, that's what you're approved for. That might be really what you're approved for, but it might not actually work with your financial situation as it is right now. So even if you don't buy in the next year, 2 years, anytime you start thinking about taking on a mortgage, I would encourage you to look at 2 to 3 months expenses and then really have an idea of, is there a little bit of wiggle room here? Is there not enough wiggle room? Is there something I need to cut back on? Should I wait till my car's paid off? So that when you take on that mortgage payment, you can comfortably pay that. But also with home ownership comes lots of joys of unexpected things that cost lots of money. So I don't want you to overextend yourself, and then if your hot water heater goes out, something like that, you don't have a way to address that emergency. So saving not only for the down payment, but also maybe saving a little bit as a financial emergency cushion in case something does happen with your home as well. Maybe you need a new fence. All kinds of things happen. It's a really fun time in your life when you start realizing, oh, it's not just the mortgage payment. The next thing that I want you to do is start looking at your credit. What's going on? What are they saying out there? What are these different credit bureaus telling you or telling financial institutions about you, and how stable are you to actually lend to? So the first thing you can look at is your credit report. You can go to annualcreditreport.com. We got it up here. If you're not a note taker, I will email this presentation to everybody as well. At annualcreditreport.com, you can pull a free credit report from any of the 3 credit bureaus. It's going to tell you if you have any negative accounts, and you can start working on those. Or it's going to tell you, hey, you have lots of positive behaviors, you're doing okay. And it will also tell you all of the different addresses that you've lived at any point in your life. And then it will also tell you how to fix some of those things as well if you do have a few negative indicators on your report. So look at the report. The report directly drives what we see in our score. So all of the information that's in the report is what drives the score. So look at your report first. It's going to tell you some of the very specific things. The number just kind of spits out everything, and it might not tell you where you can make some changes, where you can make some positive changes to boost that up a little bit. You can purchase your score from myfico.com if you want to. It's about $15 to $20. Sometimes it goes on sale, it's $15. When it's not on sale, it's $20. That's the most common credit score that's used. You can also now check something that's fairly new, and it is called Credit Karma. I hope you guys can see that. This is a free website. You can actually look at your report there from a credit bureau known as TransUnion. It's one of the big three. And here they also will calculate your score for you. And what I want you to be aware of when you start going into the home buying process is that if you pulled a mortgage from Wells Fargo and some other financial institution, they might have different scores for you. And that's going to depend on where they pulled the score from. Did they pull it from FICO? Did they pull it from TransUnion? It's not too much of a difference typically, but it just gives you an idea of, okay, how much is this score off? And that can impact what you get as far as your interest rate on your mortgage. So you might want to do 2 or 3 pre-approvals with your mortgage, which I'll talk about in a second, to see, okay, who's offering me the best interest rate right now? And if they're all relatively the same, is there anything I can do within my credit to bump up my credit score so that I get a better interest rate? And has anybody looked at interest rates right now? They're pretty low. So this is a good time maybe to buy. They were talking about raising them up. They decided not to do that. So they might still remain low for the near future, who knows? But we'll talk about what that means too for you when interest rates are really low. And so right now the interest rates are sitting at 3.25, kind of depends on what your credit score is too. But if you're kind of interested to see, if you wait a year or so to decide to jump into the home buying process, you can always go to bankrate.com. This is a great tool for home buying, a great resource. You can click on the mortgages tab, if it'll let me. There we go. And you can just get an idea of what kind of mortgage rates are out there right now. And it's always going to show you the cheapest ones. These might not be any of the financial institutions that you utilize. Typically, these are all online institutions. But there might be some, well, there's not anybody that you're from, well, let's see. Don't really see anybody familiar except for Citi, so you can see that they're a little bit higher, at a higher interest rate. So this is a good place to go and check and just kind of understand what the numbers are out there right now. And you can also look at the average rates in this particular area that we're in. So it's always going to pull Dallas because it's pulling off of the local internet. But you could also type in other locations if you're interested in moving to Colorado or California. And you can kind of see what's out there right now for those areas. But remember that a lot of this interest rate is going to be tied to what you're putting down sometimes. So what you're putting down is your down payment, but also what your score is. So if you have a little bit of a lower score, your interest might be a little bit on the high side, even though the average is maybe a little bit lower. So the next step after you've researched all of these things, you really have a good idea and understanding of what your budget looks like, how much you can actually take on. You can start talking to lenders about getting pre-approved. So has anybody ever bought a car in here? Bought a car? Okay. So maybe she got pre-approved instead of going to the dealership and using their financing, she decided to use Wells Fargo or whoever you bank with, right? So pre-approval is really important right now, in particular in the housing market, because it allows you, if you see a house that you really like and you're working with a realtor, to go ahead and put in an offer, because we've already kind of looked at what your finances are and we know that you're probably a good person to lend to. So I talked a little bit earlier about the interest rates being low and how that is impacting people who are house hunting now negatively, unfortunately, is everybody wants to buy a house because it's a great time to get into a mortgage because interest rates are really low. And then also what we're experiencing, at least in the DFW area, is there just aren't that many houses on the market. So houses are going very, very fast. In particular here in Denton for some unknown reason, and they're also a little bit on the high side from what they really should be worth. So when we see low interest rates like that, it's really nice to have that pre-approval so that if you see a house that you like and you know the market is moving fast, you have a better chance of actually getting into that house that you're interested in. So pre-approval helps you that way. It also helps you identify what you qualify for, how much house you can buy. So what is the overall mortgage that you can take on, and that kind of might drive some of the decisions that you make here. And another thing that can drive that too is helping you figure out, okay, how much do I need to put down for a down payment? And they can do different pre-approvals for you based on different down payment amounts. So that's something that you can talk to lenders about. The pre-approval process is usually good, or the paperwork is usually good for 30 to 60 days. So if you, in that time, haven't found a house, you take a break, you go on vacation, you'll need to get a new pre-approval worksheet. And there are a lot of things that they're looking at in that pre-approval process, and we'll jump into that in just a second. You also might want to get pre-approval based on different types of mortgages. And the two that are the most common and probably what they're going to push you towards is a 30-year and a 15-year mortgage. So what happens if you have a 15-year mortgage? What do you guys think?
Higher payments.
Higher payments, exactly. We save a little bit more money over time. And if you have a 30-year mortgage, they're just smaller payments over a longer amount of time. And then you can also look at, do you want an adjustable rate mortgage or do you want a fixed rate mortgage? Do you guys know what that means? No?
Adjustable can fluctuate with the time.
Yes, your interest rate can fluctuate, exactly. And with this fixed rate mortgage, it's going to stay the same over the life of the loan. So this is something you might want to think about and consider when you start thinking about long-term home ownership. Am I going to keep this house for forever? Is this my forever home? Am I just going to, do I like the stability of this fixed rate mortgage, or do I kind of like this adjustable rate mortgage? And so when we talk about adjustable rate mortgages, that's really a lot of problems that we ran into when we had the housing crisis in 2008. Lots of people had adjustable rate mortgages, and one day they just went and skyrocketed, and then people couldn't cover their monthly mortgage payments. So I typically tell people to err on the side of fixed rate mortgages. Interest rates are pretty low right now, so it makes the most sense. You're not going to get that much of a discount right now on an adjustable rate mortgage anyways. But it is an option that you can be interested in if you're thinking strategically about some home buying, if you anticipate that you'll move in the next 2 years, something like that. And you're just trying to build some credit or some equity, and you think that a way to do that is through home buying. That's something that you can do too. So, be pre-approved before you start looking at a house. I talked about that. And keep in mind any kind of cost for renovations. And so the reason that we talk about this is because if you are a first-time home buyer, there are, through the first-time home buying, I'll put it up here, through HUD, which is, you can get an FHA loan. And what you can do with the FHA loan is go above the cost of the house, and you can factor in what you anticipate renovation costs would be. So what this encourages people to do is to get into some of those older homes. So some people are interested in older homes and some people aren't, but if you were interested in an older home and you're like, man, this home needs a lot of work, but you feel like the mortgage is relatively low, you can also roll in some renovation costs. FHA will actually send somebody out to do an estimate of those renovation costs, and then they'll tell you what they anticipate that will be, and that will become part of your mortgage. So there's some options there when you're looking at homes. You don't need to feel like, okay, I'm not a renovator, or I definitely don't have the money, so I have to pay the mortgage plus renovation costs. Sometimes you can make that part of your mortgage payment through the FHA, and they have different stipulations, and you can visit all of those stipulations. What's the limitation on renovations at their website as well. So you can't get a pool, okay? You can't get all kinds of really fancy things, but just structural things, some interior things, they will help you pay for as well. One thing that a lot of people worry about is that they can't really shop around for pre-approval or for a loan, and that is not true. You definitely can go to 2 or 3 lenders. 2 or 3 above that is not going to tell you much different, so that can hurt your score a little bit because we're looking at hard inquiries. So hard inquiries mean you activated the pool on your credit report. So more than 3 can kind of hurt you, and a whole bunch in a 90-day period can also hurt you. So if you don't find something right away, wait 1 or 2 months and then get that pre-approval again so that you have the best credit score available to you. So any questions on this piece? We're going to look at some real numbers here in just a second. Any questions? Right. So some things that you need for pre-approval: paycheck stubs, bank statements, any kind of rental history, 2 proofs of identification, and the last 2 years of either your W-2s, 1099s if you're self-employed, so that they can kind of understand, okay, how much money do you have coming in? And all of these factors factor into how much they believe you're eligible for to have as a monthly mortgage payment. So they're looking at your financial life to understand, okay, this would help this person if we gave them this type of mortgage, or it would really hurt them if we gave them this much money because they have all of these other things going on in their financial life. And so they're typically kind of looking at what other pieces of credit do you have in your financial life. So I hope that you guys can see this. This is an example of what they look at. So this is 2 people, Olivia and Alex. They make the same amount of money. They make $4,000 a month. And when we talk about how much you should take out as your monthly mortgage payment or even rent, we usually suggest 25 to 30% of your take-home income. So that leaves you room to pay for a lot of other things in your financial life. So in this example, we used 28%, so we said $1,120. And we can look at them financially and see that they're very different. So just because their take-home income says, hey, they should be able to afford this type of mortgage or this amount of mortgage, we look at them in depth, it's not necessarily the case. So Olivia has some student loan debt. She just bought a new car and she has some credit cards with some balances. So all of her non-housing debt, it totals up to $650 a month. And we look at, okay, based on that, what are we looking at as far as a whole year? And we're taking those, or what her maximum debt payment could be, I'm sorry. So $1,440, we're minusing $650 out of that, and we are left with a safe housing payment of $790. All right? If we look at Alex, he paid his student loans off, he doesn't have any credit card debt, and he has a very small car payment. So his total non-housing debt a month is $250. His maximum total debt payment is $1,440 as well, so 36%, but he's only utilizing $250 of that, so that leaves him with eligible for $1,190 as a mortgage payment. So you can kind of see that this one might be different for everybody, and you can do these calculations on your own as well. They're called front-end and back-end calculations. So if you want to input some of your own personal information in here, you can do some front-end and back-end calculations. You can do that on bankrate.com. You can also just Google it, and it'll pull up the calculators for you. And that will kind of give you an idea without ever doing any pre-approval work through a financial institution. Okay, what am I talking about as far as eligibility here? And you can also do a search, and you can find this calculator on Bankrate, and it's just called How Much Home Can I Afford? So tell me how much I qualify for, and it'll typically spit out for you a total purchase price of a home. So $110,000, $200,000. It'll give you that number instead of the monthly payment amount as well. So you can see that whatever's going on in your financial life can really impact what you can do as far as the type of home you can buy or what kind of mortgage payment you can actually afford each month. So that's why I said in the beginning, make sure that you really, really understand your budget, you really understand what your credit looks like so that you can maximize whatever you're trying to do. If it's to get the lowest interest rate, if it's to get the highest mortgage, monthly be approved for the highest mortgage payment each month so you can get your dream home, whatever that may be. Those are the things that you want to look at ahead of time so you have a really clear idea when you go into your search. Okay, let me be realistic and factor out all of the houses that are 200,000, because that's not in my world right now, right? And we can kind of get lost in this HGTV world of these are all the things that I want, and this is how I want it to look, and get really specific, and that might just not be for your first home actually feasible. So, or you might have to do a little bit of searching. You might just not pop up with all of those homes right away. So keep that in mind. The next part, once you've gone through the pre-approval process, is to start looking for your home. So we talked a little bit, and for those of you that came in earlier, or a little bit late, we sort of talked about some things that we were looking at. And it is, or can be, a long process. So don't say, in a month I'll be in a new home, because at least in this area, in DFW area, that's not really happening for most people. It's usually a 3-month time frame from finding the house to closing to actually being in the house. So just be aware that it is a little bit of time, and it might take some time to actually find the right home that's the right fit for you. So we talked about some online resources, so tell me some places where you have looked online at homes.
Zillow.
Zillow. Okay, what else? That's the big one. Trulia is also another one. You can also look on individual realtors' websites. And you might not hurt, if you're being really serious about home buying, to actually work with a realtor. And they can help you get into some homes that you may not be able to look at on your own, or they may be able to help you get into looking at homes before they're posted to Trulia and Zillow, and then there's everybody and their mother trying to look at those homes as well. So sometimes a realtor can be helpful. Sometimes a realtor can add some additional cost if you're trying to do it really on your own and you want to do the home buying process by yourself. But the realtor typically will be able to help you through the process. So I wouldn't shy away from utilizing one, because they can help you with a lot of the paperwork. They can help you get connected to inspectors, but you can definitely do it on your own as well if you want to. And there's lots of tools and resources online to kind of do the home buying process without a realtor. The benefit of the realtor is they can get you into some homes that you might not be able to look at on your own. So any questions about that process? So lots of realtors out there for different people to look at different things. Some people who specialize specifically in first-time home buyers as well, and they typically have a really good pulse on the market here in DFW, and they know a lot about the specifications for first-time home buyers. If you would also want to roll in some renovation costs into that first-time home buyer program as well. So when you're looking for, if hopefully you grab this worksheet. So this is a worksheet. I'm hoping it's not anywhere else in my slides here, but when you're looking for a home, I'd encourage you to make a copy of this. If you wrote on it, it's okay. This is actually off of the FHA website, so you can find more copies of this if you'd like. And if you start looking at multiple homes, you might create a ranking system of how important to me is a small commute, a backyard, a garage, and then the houses that you look at, you can kind of rank them, and then when it all becomes a blur in your mind, hopefully you can go back to your sheets here and say, okay, I really liked this one, I really didn't like that one, it didn't tick all of the boxes for me. There are a few other things on this sheet that you might not care about right now, such as schools. Maybe you don't have kids and you're not planning to have kids ever. You could probably just mark that section off. But if you are planning on staying in your home for a while and you think you might have kids, that might be something that's really important to you. So this sheet just helps you think about some of the factors that we sort of forget about when we're just looking at things on the internet and kind of looking at all the pretty pictures that they have. Sometimes those pictures aren't so pretty, actually. Usually they try to make them really nice. So once you have identified and found your dream home that ticks all of your boxes here, you can actually make an offer. And this is where a realtor can be really helpful, or doing some research on your own is also very helpful. So what you want to do is compare all of the homes in the area to where you are buying and compared to the house that you are looking at and considering making an offer on. And you want to look for homes that have sort of the same characteristics. It's got a garage, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, sort of the same square footage. You want to look at that. And then you want to see what those homes sold for recently. And your offer should be close to those numbers as well, unless absolutely no homes in that area have sold in the last 5 years. And then you'll want to expand your search out a little bit further, maybe looking at the county average sale for those types of homes, or if the city has a database as well, you'll be able to look at, okay, what are homes in this area with the same characteristics, what did they sell for in the last 3 to 6 months. So, and I'll show you guys what that looks like here in just a second. Complete your loan application. So when you did the pre-approval form, if you did a pre-approval, that doesn't mean anything really. It just means we looked at this person's finances, here's what's going on, here's the maximum amount they could probably afford as a mortgage. Then you gotta go in and you gotta put down some real earnest money. That's what they call the down payment, and then also some other pieces. Some of the closing costs, some of the inspection costs, some of the money that typically goes to the seller's realtor side. So they'll want you to put down some of that earnest money when you complete the loan application as well. Now, if the home does not pass inspection, or the application or the seller, something happens on their end, you get that money back typically. You might lose a little bit of money on the home inspection, but the home inspection is roughly about $100 to $150 depending on who you utilize, the size of the home, some different factors. So you will get that earnest money back if something happens in the paperwork process, which can happen. So if there happens to be a lien on the home, if the title isn't clear, if they owe some back taxes to the city, sometimes a sale will not go through for those reasons. So just be prepared. When you do the inspection, they will tell you what kinds of things are going on in the home currently. Still got copper wiring, foundation's cracked, needs a new roof, whatever it might be. And sometimes those are things that you can negotiate in your final terms. I want you to replace the roof. I'm not going to pay the closing costs if you pay them, and I don't worry about making you pay for the roof because it might be cheaper for the seller that way. So there's some different things that you can actually negotiate in the final terms of your contract when you sit down to sign it. So that's where we see, if we ever watch any of those HGTV shows, all of the sort of back and forth, and sometimes negotiating those final terms or realizing there's some things wrong with the home. What are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? Do we want to walk away? Those kinds of things. And you can totally walk away as well. So in this whole process, anybody, the seller or the buyer, can walk away from the process. So if you get not a good feeling, or if it's not the terms that you want, it's okay to kind of start the process over. And that's where some of that length of time comes in too. The last thing is do a final walkthrough of the house. And I would encourage you, and let me see if it's on my next slide. Yep. I would encourage you to go to the home at different times of the day to see what the atmosphere is like in that area, to understand where the sun hits, what the traffic is like, all kinds of different factors. And I say this because I looked at a house, I loved it, and lo and behold, it's behind a Harley-Davidson shop, and every Saturday morning they have their training rides, and it's really loud at 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? So that's something that I don't think I wouldn't have gotten the house for that reason, but for somebody, that might be a deal breaker, right? So look at the home at different times, so you really understand, okay, I'm in a school zone, or this kids like to play basketball until midnight. Whatever it is, you'll kind of have an idea when you get into the home. So this is what I was talking about in comparing homes in the neighborhood. So this house that you're looking at was built in the 1960s, so maybe not for those people who don't want an older home. But it has 3 bedrooms, and they're typically 1,500 to 1,750 square feet. And they've been selling between 1,400 and 1,800, and you want to make an offer of 1,600, 100,065. All right, that's your offer that you want to put in, and that's it's what it's listed at. But what are you going to offer? So you can look at the homes that sold in the last week. One was 139, one was almost 180, and then one was at 157. So what would you guys offer? What do you think? It's listed at 165. We've kind of had some across the board offers. The one that was the lowest only had 1.5 baths, so keep that in mind. And this one has 2 baths, so you might offer a little bit more than the 139. So you can start looking at and comparing some of the prices, and that can kind of help you determine, am I getting a good buy? Is this a little bit overpriced? Is it priced this high because it has a lot of updates, renovations? So doing a nice search of the homes in the area is very helpful. And I know that if you're not going through a realtor on Zillow, you can actually see these things. It might not be quite as specific, such as a huge backyard, renovations, those types of things, but it will give you a good idea of what homes in the area have gone for recently as well. And this is a different presentation that I will also send you guys as well if you can put your email there in the back. And it has a lot more numbers in it. Any questions here about comparing prices? All right. So as I talked about before, there's a few things that go into loan processing. So even when you make that offer on the home, let's say you decide for 345 Cardinal Lane, you're just going to stick with 165. There's a few things that will happen. They will come in and appraise the home, and they will tell you what the value is as well. You can typically see that through tax forms from the county anyways, as to what the appraisal value is. And this might be important to you because you might care about how much in taxes you're going to pay on the house. So has anybody looked at buying a home in Austin? No? Okay, everybody's looking in this area. So if you looked at a home in Austin compared to a home here in the DFW area, what you would find is the property taxes are really, really, really high in Austin. So even though you might get a home and a mortgage that's a good value, you have to factor in some of the other costs that sometimes can come with that. And that's where doing a search, if you're thinking about leaving this area, is important because you can see where some of the other costs can come in. So the appraisal will tell you a little bit about what it looks like as far as property taxes, which is important because that'll be rolled into your mortgage as well. They'll also just look at all of your paperwork, the seller's paperwork. You'll go into the final approval, and then you will go into the closing, which is sometimes where people can get hung up because we start doing a lot of negotiations. In our closing, we start deciding, okay, maybe I don't want to put as much in a down payment down. Can I roll it into the mortgage and change my mortgage terms a little bit? So this is where you can sort of do a little bit more wheeling and dealing if you want to. So give yourself time in the closing to go ahead, look at your budget again, plug in that mortgage amount, plug in any renovations that you think you're going to do right away, and see, okay, is this timeline going to work? Does it make sense to me? And you always want to make sure that you're in contact with your lender the whole time. So when we have done this presentation in the past, we have actually had a realtor and a lender with us. And one of the things that the lender talks about is that in this process, when you have made an offer on a house, do not go out and change your financial life. If you do, notify the lender so that they can adjust accordingly. If all of a sudden you get this big inheritance, it can change everything in what they've looked at in your profile and your financial life. Or if you buy a new car, that can also change too. So be aware and a little bit careful during this time period, once you've made an offer and you're in the closing period, to not do something really, really drastic in your financial life if you can help it. Because that can change some of the negotiations as well and impact some of the eligibility that you have for certain mortgages too. So be aware of that. And then get all disclosure paperwork. Now, what is disclosure paperwork? Do you guys know? Anybody watched American Horror Story?
It's like whatever happened in the house.
Right, exactly. Whatever happened in the house. So hopefully nobody passed away in the house of unfortunate means. But it could be a flood, it could be a fire, and we rebuilt this part of the house. So those are all of the things that you want to know about. So So that if later on down the road something happens, the city comes in and reappraises your house and they realize, whoa, you've got an extra room, it's to prevent you from being surprised by any of those things. So full disclosure will typically, hopefully, uncover most things about the house that you as a homeowner would want to be aware of. If there's been any kind of structural damage, that's usually signed off on, and those plans are approved by the city, but sometimes people add on strange things to their houses and don't really ask questions. So that would be something that you would want to know about, so that if you do go in to make changes, you're not surprised that, oh, this was never approved, and you spend a lot of money and time getting those structural changes approved from the city after the fact. So any questions here on closing the loan? So the last piece is your closing documents, understanding what your homeowner's policy is. So what does this mean? What am I committing to? Are there any warranties on any of the appliances that come with the house, or the air conditioner, or the water heater? What's going to happen with those types of things? What is going to happen to you budgetarily? So what do you guys anticipate that once you buy a home, you will probably spend money on right away?
Furniture,
Furniture?
decorations.
Decorations? What else? What is the number one renovation do you think that people do?
Kitchen.
Not the kitchen.
Carpet.
Most people tear out the carpet.
Oh,
Okay, so most people are going to do their floors. And so you might be interested in saying, okay, well, that's the first thing I want to do. Let me cost that out. A lot of people paint as well. And so you might also build in some timeline for yourself from wherever you're living to do some of those things before you actually move into the home. And that might mean having a little bit of money up front too. And last but not least, really make sure that hopefully you enjoy your home and you have a great experience through the whole process. So the main thing to think about here is really what kind of house can I afford, how much home can I afford, and then what do I want that to look like, and what is my timeline for doing it. So we didn't talk too much about actual real numbers as far as the down payment, but what have you guys heard as far as a down payment amount?
20 to 30%.
20 to 30%, and why? Why 20 to 30%? What do you guys think? Anyone know? All right, I will tell you. If you do not put down 20 to 30%, which a lot of people don't anymore, quite honestly, but if you decide not to, what you get tacked into your mortgage payment is something called PMI. And this stands for Private Mortgage Insurance. So it's an additional payment. It looks like your monthly mortgage. It comes rolled into your mortgage payment. It's an additional payment until you reach 20% put down in the home. So if the house is, let me do a good number so I can actually do the mental math. If your mortgage is $80,000, you don't put down 20%, when would you hit 20%? What number? Anybody know? I think that's right. Now we're recording this and I can't do math. So I'll just say 10,000 for the sake of our experiment here. So once you hit 10,000, then the private mortgage insurance will roll off. But you could save a lot of money by not paying the PMI over time. You could have more money that would be going towards the principal instead of going to this insurance, which essentially just makes sure that if you get out of the house early, the seller or the financer makes the money back on the home. So that's what this happens. Or if something catastrophic happens to the home, we're covered a little bit through this insurance as well. So be aware of PMI. If you decide to go through a first-time home buyers program, PMI no longer rolls off. So one of the benefits of a first-time home buyers program is that you can put a very low down payment down. And that's what they kind of encourage you to do, so that you can get into the home and you can have cash to maybe fix it up or do other things. But realize that now, since 2000, I think they did it either 2013 or 2014, no longer can you get rid of the PMI once you hit 20%. It's with you for the life of that loan. So just be aware of that if you're thinking about doing a first-time homebuyers program. There are some stipulations that have changed about the private mortgage insurance. There are other homebuyer programs out there as well. If you're former military, there's some home buying programs. If you are in different public service industries such as teaching, firefighting, law enforcement, there's also some first-time home buyer programs for those people as well. And one other thing you might look at when you go into your career is some companies will actually offer money to get you into a home in a certain location within that community. And really I'm thinking about the University of Kentucky. One of the benefits that I had in my job offer there was that they would give you $15,000 if you bought a home in a certain area around the university. Those were older homes, they really needed to be rehabbed. So they were trying to encourage people in the community to get into those homes. So sometimes that can be a part of a job offer as well, is money for actually purchasing a home. So those are other ways, other sources of funding that can kind of help you get started on your home buying journey. So you might be interested in those and kind of look out for those things as well. Any other questions that you guys have about home buying, concerns? No? Great. So other thing that I talked about the University of Kentucky, but you can also look for city-sponsored programs. So somebody earlier was talking about Louisville, and at one point in time they had a city-sponsored program to get into some homes that are in their downtown area that are a little bit older. So that's something that you might look at. Always you're going to save money on a 15-year mortgage. I mean, the math is pretty obvious there. 30 years versus 15 years. You know, you're always going to save money doing a 15-year mortgage. Like I talked about, look at visiting the house during different hours and make extra payments. So what we know is that if you make 13 payments a year, you're almost cutting, sometimes you can cut the increase in your insurance on your mortgage in half sometimes if you do that consistently. So one extra payment a year can actually really be beneficial mathematically. And the last thing is, and I'll tell you this because I have lots of friends who have been looking at buying homes recently, don't fall in love with the house. All right, that's going to make your negotiations harder, and then you could find something out in the inspection that makes it not a good buy. And sometimes if it's something very critical in an inspection, they cannot actually sell the home until that thing has been fixed. So try not to fall in love with the house if you can help it. Be open to lots of different options because you may face some heartbreak if it doesn't pass the inspection, the seller backs out. And like I talked about earlier, we have a really tight market, at least in the DFW area. And so a lot of homes are going really, really fast, or people are paying above the asking price because they realize, okay, I'm not going to find anything else. I really love this house. Let me go ahead and pay more. And that might not be a possibility for you either. So keep that in mind as you're doing your home buying. And this is just a comparison to show you what it looks like in your cost savings. So you can see here the total interest cost over the life of the loan for a 30-year mortgage is $161,000 versus $65,000. So these are some numbers that if you know you found your dream home, you're never moving ever, you might consider the 15-year mortgage because you're going to save a little bit of money. If you know that because of your career or just because you like to move to new places, you might not stay in a home very long, you might look at a 30-year mortgage because you'll keep a little bit more money in your pocket instead of putting it all towards the principal on a home that you're not going to have for that long. And these are also very high interest rates, so this was a chart that we did a few years ago, so nothing is that high right now that I have seen lately. And then this is just an idea to give you some numbers of your total upfront cost. The price of the home was $185,000. They put down $25,000, and then you can see what some of the other fees are that come into the home buying process. So if you rolled your down payment into your home, you would still owe $2,280. So you still have to have some earnest money at the end of the day. So keep that in mind. So that's where that savings comes in. And then we can also look at some of the monthly payments that roll in here. And this is where you might care about your property taxes when you start seeing these things added into the mortgage. Most people now will give you a mortgage payment with these factors calculated in. Some lenders do not, so be aware of that when you go in for the pre-approval. Sometimes it's rolled in, sometimes it's not, and that's what you'll want to know so that you have a really clear picture. You don't say, oh, I can afford this much home, and then you forgot to add in some of these other pieces as well. So that's very important to think of, keep in mind. And a few helpful sites for you. HUD is where you can go into the First Time Home Buyers Program and look up lots of things. It's also where you can find little worksheets such as this one that you can print out. And there's the annual credit report as well, if you're just interested in what your credit looks like right now. So any questions about the home buying process? Any concerns? Does it feel manageable? I don't know, I hope I didn't scare you guys. But this just helps you also have a starting point, a reference point for how much you might need to save up just to get this process started. Even if you decide not to go with a down payment, you still need a little bit of cash in hand to actually close on the sale of a home typically. Very few cases are they going to let you put nothing down. So if you guys have questions, as I said in the beginning, come see us. We'll sit down with you. We'll help you get connected to some of those first-time homebuyer programs if you're interested. We are located in Chestnut Hall. It's the same building as the health center across from the rec center. And you can come in and sit down for a one-on-one coaching session. If you have questions about your budget, we'll talk to you about that as well. And if you have absolutely no questions related to this particular session, but something else in your financial life, we can talk to you about those things as well. So come see us if you need any help.